When I was at university, I really have to struggle to think about female role models. There weren't many female lecturers around.
I think early in my career, my role models were male, and certainly that was very much a reflection of who was working in the field and who I came across.
And it was sort of clear, or that's what we thought at the time, that if you wanted to be a professor, you had to sacrifice everything. Like that it wasn't possible to have family and a career. It was just either or.
I think I am driven and determined, but I think that is fueled by just genuine enthusiasm for the subject that I study, that I teach, that I get involved with. I think that's how my drive and ambition comes through.
I think it probably is quite depressing for people who don't see female role models. The Economic History Society had a lot of female presidents, female professors, but I think that's a fairly recent phenomenon. And for me, it did help me a great deal to think that I could meet female professors.
There are ways in which you can quite explicitly up your profile. You can offer to give talks, and that becomes an invited talk, for example. And these are actually things you need to think about when you're going for promotion as well, because esteem's a very big part of what's looked at for level 5 to 6 or level 6 to 7 promotions.
When I started my career, I was very aware that I was a woman in a male-dominated environment. The courses that I chose to do were very male-dominated, right from my HND through to my Masters. When I came to University of Southampton, I was one woman on a research group for a number of years before other women joined, so I was very aware of it.
I mean, for a long period of time, I was the only female member of academic staff in oceanography, and over the last decade we've appointed a lot more women, and I think largely, scientists in particular, are quite gender blind. They don't think of me as a woman, they think of me as Rachel, they think of me as, you know, their colleague, and we just get on with it.
I did feel quite noticeable as one of very few women lecturers. I can remember undergraduates finding it quite hard to believe that I was a lecturer, for example, assuming if they met me in the office that I was probably one of the secretaries. I think that felt like a kind of interesting challenge, really, to me more than anything else.
We joke about, but to be honest, I've never felt threatened by anyone making any sexist jokes or something like that. I mean, it does happen, and sometimes it may be a bit of a laddie culture, but I personally don't mind so much. I've grown up with 4 brothers. I've had my fair share of boys around me, so I really don't think that's a problem for me.
I feel if you're good at what you do, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, and that's certainly the experience that I've had at Southampton.
I do still see the glass ceiling in operation. I think the best way with which we can deal with this is to be aware of how certain roles are viewed and making sure that we're clear about why we do certain things and how we get credit for the things that we do, so we don't get put into small boxes of girls' jobs.
It's unclear how much of a glass ceiling there is in certain fields, but say in my department there is only one female professor, and that was quite a recent appointment. It's quite hard sometimes to see why, when there are so many undergraduates in economics, this hasn't fed through.
And I get very frustrated when I'm in meetings and I hear comments like, oh, it's because they all have babies, or they lose direction because they become family-oriented and things like that. That's really quite offensive sometimes, because I think it's wrong and it's an easy answer. It's so much more complicated than that.
I haven't hit the glass ceiling yet, but there might be one there.
And sometimes women simply don't think they deserve it. I remember when I went to see the Dean to ask for a promotion, I was just going to ask for a promotion to a reader level, and he said to me, well, Stephanie, I think you should go for a chair. And I went, oh no, don't be so ridiculous, you know, I couldn't possibly do that. And when I went home and told my husband, he said, are you insane? Are you completely mad? go back tomorrow and see the dean. So I tapped on his door the next day and he laughed at me and he said, I just knew you'd be back today and you really shouldn't have done that yesterday. And he said, no male academic he's ever known would ever have done that. Whereas me, being a woman who is extremely driven and focused, still has within me that little voice that says I don't deserve it.
I think the biggest advice I can give to somebody starting out is that they have to be their own champion more than anybody else. I've created a digital identity for myself. I have my own website. I don't necessarily rely on the university's website to promote my research. I do Twitter and I have Facebook pages for some of my projects, and I engage a lot in the faculty and university marketing teams to promote various milestones in the projects that I run and that I work on. I think you have to do that. You can't rely on somebody else to do that for you, and I think it's a big part of what can make you successful. If you're seen, people know you, people then come to you with project ideas, and that's how your career builds.
I have been involved in setting up mentoring schemes for early career researchers in our faculty, and we are rolling that out again.
I have a career coach and a mentor. Both people I look up to and admire greatly in our area, and as personal, on a personal level as well.
The role that mentors have played in my career has, I think, been very strong. I think there's a mixture of mentoring that I've been lucky enough to receive. You know, I made contact with one of our senior women in the university, Dame Wendy Hall, when she was a mere senior lecturer, and she was a very useful external person because she's in a different department from me, and she had some interesting advice for me about different ways to do things and different ways to look at stuff.
I've had mentors that have been my tutors, I've had mentors that have been my colleagues, I've had mentors that have been retired emeritus professors, and I've used these people in different ways, and some have come, some have gone, but throughout my career I've certainly had a whole variety of people I'd consider to be my mentor.
They gave me specific information about my career. They gave me general advice about the quality of my work so they can encourage me to carry on. They told me, for instance, to publish a book, not listen to my economic colleagues who wanted me to publish journal articles.
You need that. I think you need the positive role model. I think you need somebody with more expertise than you to be able to navigate certain political, academic things that you're just not aware of as a younger researcher, younger member of staff.
I think the biggest challenge that faces women in academia today is making the decision as to how much they want to strive and push, and combine that with what is required if you're going to have a family.
And sort of the thought of starting a family is very daunting because the job requires you to be here a lot of hours, and you try and sort of just figure out how you would fit in that many more hours into an already really full day.
I think there's lots of advice about when you should do it, but my observation is that most people really decide to do it when it's emotionally ready for them, and I actually think your career should take second backseat to that, essentially.
I didn't start thinking about having a family till my husband put a lot of pressure on me because I was quite obsessed with research and writing. And being a medic, he did say to me, "You're 37, you're biologically ancient, you better start really thinking about having a child."
Well, of course, not every academic decides to have children. I didn't. And I don't know if it's certainly made my career a little bit easier because I didn't have that extra time off and I didn't have that extra concern. What I had instead was elder care issues. So I had two parents who were very ill.
So my partner Ian has been an enormous part of my ability to balance work and life and have my children, obviously. He is a very committed partner. He's extremely fair. He has a good feminist mindset and shares everything very equally with me, including childcare.
For me personally, it probably slowed me down a little. It probably meant that I didn't become a professor till several years after my male colleagues, but essentially the trajectory is in the right direction, and It's a long game. You know, we work for 40 years, so I think spending 5 or 6 years bringing up young children in the middle of that is a perfectly feasible thing to do.
Young women in my field, I would give them the advice to join a proper academic society that gets them outside of their university. They never know how useful that's going to be in dealing with problems, giving them a different attitude, because you can get tunnel vision in your own department, especially if they aren't doing what you're doing. They don't really know, and they can't really advise you in the way that an academic society can. So I'd say join up and go to everything and volunteer to do things for that society and just get yourself embedded in it.
I think the most important thing that one can have and should have is focus, focus, focus.
Some people look at me and see that I am opportunistic. I think that I see opportunities and I take them. I don't wait for the next thing to come along. I do see that there is a finite time for people and for people to succeed in what they choose to do. And I've been very focused about what I wanted to do in my career.
There's been a huge change in the number of women in my field in the last 20 years. So when I was first appointed in Southampton, there were no other women in my department. There were very few women in science and engineering in the university, and that landscape's completely changed now.
There are a lot more female role models now than there was when I started my undergrad degree. And I think hopefully this will continue.
Over the last 20 years, I think we're seeing more, say, training schemes or various schemes to improve women's chances in academia. I think there's an understanding that this shouldn't just be a lip service exercise.
I think the main challenge that faces young female students is the same challenge that faces young male students. It's that you've got to be dedicated. There are fewer jobs, so you have to be the best at what you can do. I think if you want a research career, you have to be creative, business-focused, self-motivated, have all of these key skills, but I don't think it necessarily comes down to whether you're a male or a female anymore. It's how good you are at your job.